So I'm gonna talk about two other things before that. So the other thing that I want to talk about was, one of the things I want to talk about for this episode was the second night of Kill Tony at the Madison Square Garden. Hello, welcome back to Al Talks. This podcast I started 3 years ago to chronicle me starting stand up. This podcast is a weekly podcast. It comes out once a week, and this is just a small little introduction video into the podcast. So down below in the description of each episode, you can go to my Linktree and find links to everything connected to me. This podcast is available on YouTube, which you're watching it on right now, and also on Spotify. But yeah, that is just a small introduction into this podcast and everything that goes along with it. Hello, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'll talk. Again with the So this episode, I'm gonna change the schedule around a little bit because when I record for the weeks ahead. So I'm gonna push because I haven't seen Samuel yet. That's gonna happen Tuesday. I'm recording this on Saturday, so that episode will come out in 3 weeks' time. So I'm gonna talk about two other things before that. So the other thing that I want to talk about was, one of the things I want to talk about for this episode was the second night of Kill Tony at the Madison Square Garden, sold out show where there was another host of comedians that came back on, and then some new ones. I watched this about an hour ago. Well, finished watching. I've been watching that over the last couple of days. About 2.5 hours worth of a show. They released on YouTube, I think last week or this week. Like I said, I'm recording this on Saturday, so by the time you see this will be next week. But yeah, this week at some stage, I think they released it. I talked about it briefly coming out in the last episode, I think I did. But yeah, so this episode's the guest host was at the start there was two that were there, and then no one got brought onto the panel. And the first guest host was Joe Biden, who was portrayed by Adam Bray, and then Shane Gillis, who was doing Donald Trump. So they were the kind of two guests, and then Harlan William came on early in the show and did a set, and then Tony Hinchcliffe asked him to join the panel, and also David Tell was there. David Tell, the legendary comedian from New York. But it was quite I preferred the second night, the episode. And towards the end, there was a surprise. Aaron Rodgers came out, was kicking footballs, and before that, Joey Diaz came out. Probably the most uproaring, standing ovation that I've ever seen anybody get. Like, other than that, I think the biggest pop I'd ever seen in comedy was from Bert Kreischer taking off his shirt in like an arena or a stadium. You know, that's, if you've been following this podcast for a while, you very well know that I'm a huge Joey Diaz fan. I've listened to the Church of What's Happening and then his subsequent podcast. And, I've been a big fan of his comedy, and he's a huge inspiration for me. And, his set in Madison Square Garden, even though short, was very good, very funny. In terms of the bucket pulls in Kill Tony, if you're not sure, I'll just mention the last episode, the first night in Madison Square Garden. But Kill Tony is basically an open mic where people put their name into a hat or a bucket and then gets pulled out. You get 60 seconds uninterrupted, and afterwards you get reviewed by the judging comedy panel. It's a show that was started by Tony Hinchcliffe and Brian Red Band all the way back to, I think it's like 12 or 13 years ago, in the OR in the Comedy Store, where I think they had like an audience of like 10 or 12 people at the time, and now they're selling out Madison Square Garden 2 nights, 20,000 people. They also sold the Kia Forum out in LA, which was the LA Forum. That's a pretty big theater as well, and a host of other smaller ones around, I think in Austin as well. I think there was a not New York, New Year show as well that was pretty big. So it's gone from strength to strength over the years. And one of the other guests that came on was Jeff Ross, who in Tony's early career in stand-up used to bring him to New York for gigs and stuff like that. And of course, because Dave Attell was there, it was great riffing with them back and forth, because they did like the Bumpin' Mics on Netflix a couple of years back, and Jeff Ross is host many of the roasts, the celebrity roasts that happen. He happens to be one of the best roasters in the business, and all his roasts are very, very funny. So it was great. Like I said, in general, I felt the bucket pulls in night 2 were a lot better, because some of the like I said, the problem I have with Kill Tony, a lot of people just don't prepare for it. They kind of just go on a whimsy. It is a huge opportunity for people to get recognized for being a comic, and then great things happen from it. Like stars are born from it, like Cam Patterson. Hans came, like, because Hans, like, for example, Cam Patterson was just another guy who put his name down a couple of years, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and all of a sudden he's doing huge things, because he used to live in Florida, then he moved to Austin after doing Kill Tony and becoming a regular. Big things happen. It's a huge opportunity for people in the US to get recognized for doing comedy and gain wonderful employment opportunities in the world of stand-up. Pretty much that's all I really have to say about night 2. But yeah, like I said, it was, overall I preferred night 2. Seeing Joey Diaz, and then like I listened to Joey Diaz's new podcast, The Check In with Lisa, where he talked about, he was like, he used to go to all these shows in New York, especially in Madison Square Garden, so it was kind of for him, he said, I could just end my career on doing that, that could be the end of it. But he said it would be a good way to end it, but he said no, he'd continue doing stand-up in small amounts, which is great. Hopefully maybe one day I'll get to see him before he totally packs it in, which would be really cool. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for this episode. Very happy for Mr. Hinchcliffe and Red Band. It really shows, like I'm 5 years in comedy at this stage, over 5 years, and it is quite a long road in game, because it by the time you figure things out, it takes time, and it's like I'm not really doing a lot of stand-up recently myself. I don't know where my notebook is. I think it's down there somewhere. But I haven't gigged in a while. I think the last gig I did was, I don't know, a couple of weeks at this stage. But I will, like I said, I will continue to put out content for the podcast, talk about different things here and there. Music, shows that I'm going to, games that I'm playing, which is the next episode I'm going to record after this. But yeah, so an overall great it was night 2 at Madison Square Garden. Kill Tony was better. I enjoyed it more. It was better content, in my opinion. So that's that. But yeah, that is this week's episode. I'm going to end it there and record the next one for the week after. Hopefully the computer will not act up, but that's that anyway. As per usual, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll see you all next week. Bye bye.